Welcome to Pacific Crossroads program. This is a new series that we're starting called Global Connections, and I'm going to share with you a conversation that we're going to have with two visiting Danish students that are here. They're part of a program called Pacific Crossroads, and as we'll hear in a moment, it's a very unique opportunity to bring some of the youth from, in this case, Denmark and Northern Europe, to learn a little bit about our culture here in the middle of the Pacific. I'm Carlos Juarez, and joining me today are Aska, Henson, and Tuya, Petersen. Both of you are here from Denmark, and I wonder if you might start by just briefly telling us what it is you're doing here, and a little bit about your own background. You tell us how old you are, and you've recently finished high school, and now you're participating in this program. Please, Aska.
I'm from Denmark, like from a suburb to Copenhagen.
Yes.
And I'm here studying at HPU. Mm-hmm. Like this, it's a short course, so it's like only 2 months or 6 weeks.
Yes.
Where we have like about the culture, the Hawaiian culture, and it's a part of learning English and still combining that with learning the culture from the place where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's sort of a culture immersion program,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to hear a little bit more specific details about that, but perhaps if we can turn it and help us learn a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm from a small city in Jutland, about half an hour from the biggest city in Jutland, that is Aarhus.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This is like the mainland of Denmark,
yeah,
sort of the peninsula.
Yeah,
excellent. And so you've come pretty far away from home. Here we are in the middle of the Pacific in Honolulu, and this is a program that has brought you to, like you've described, to kind of immerse you in culture and learn a little bit about the Pacific Islands themselves. Now, if I'm recalling, you also spent some time before arriving here. You were in New Zealand, is that right?
Yeah.
And how long were you in that place?
About a month.
You spent 1 month there, and did you tour around? You got to see parts of the islands there?
We started at the northern part and finished in the southern.
Excellent, good. And so after the experience there, which really introduced you to the Pacific Islands, now you've come to spend about 6 weeks here. And perhaps before we go into more detail about that program and some of your impressions, it might help us. You've mentioned Denmark, but for many of our listeners and viewers, Denmark, we know it as a small country in Northern Europe, of course. It's a country with a long history, a rich heritage. It is, of course, a kingdom of Denmark, which means you have a monarch. It's a constitutional monarchy. Tell us a little bit about your country, just to help us put it in the right context. You've come from very far. What can you say?
Well, what describes Denmark the most is it's flat.
A flat land,
yeah,
okay.
It's very, very flat land. And we're not that large a country. Mm-hmm. Like the whole country, we are 5 million.
Okay.
So yeah, like a small Scandinavian country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We also have a lot of islands. We have over 450 islands.
Yeah, so it's very much a maritime country and a long history of obviously connecting to the oceans. And even though we are very far from you here, I mean, there are some interesting parallels that we'll explore coming to a place like Hawaii, where we are also an island and maritime place. Your small country is also one that is, as you note, in Northern Europe, but it's also well known for a lot of its focus on issues of ecology, environmental consciousness, and you've come here to Hawaii, a place, of course, we have a lot of natural beauty here in many parts of the Pacific Islands. So there are some interesting things I'm curious to learn about your impressions of what you've seen. But first, let's talk about this program that's brought you here. It's really, I think, a good example of what we might describe as sort of global learning, opportunities that you can learn outside of the classroom, because perhaps as students, in school, you learn something about world history, about geography, but there's no substitute to coming and seeing different places, right? So I wonder if you might begin by just some impressions of, what were the first things that caught your attention that, when you first landed either in New Zealand or back here in Hawaii? What are some things that were like, just your first impressions?
Well, the first impression was like the warmth, both places, because it was like winter in Denmark.
When you left Denmark,
yeah,
it was
we
quite
went
cold.
Denmark, and it was really cold, and it was summer in New Zealand, and then when we left New Zealand, we started getting winter there. So then we came here to Hawaii, and then again it was like
So the weather shock, just getting adjusted to that. And what would you add to that?
Well, I'm really a water person, so the fact that Hawaii is an island is something I look very keen to. and if I could, I would stay in the water all day.
Oh,
They're
excellent.
really, really amazing.
You've got the water bug. And I'm curious if you could share with us, what are some of the sort of stereotypes or images that people might have back in Europe about Hawaii? It's an exotic place, it's far away. Do those images, do those stereotypes, are they real, or are there things that are, you could go back and tell your friends and family that it's not quite, or maybe it is?
Yeah, like the typical stereotype is like this paradise with where you have the hula girls dancing and on the beach normally.
With a short skirt and coconut bra.
Yes. So it was a little bit of shock, like coming to Honolulu, because it was like really this big city and all these tall buildings, and it was a lot different of what you like imagine Hawaii.
Yes.
Because I believe that I didn't know that much about Hawaii before I came here. It's just what you like learn from movies and what you learn like the typical, but that is more, like I believe it's more of on the west coast and north coast and some of the other islands. So when you like start coming to Honolulu, it's like, whoa, so Hawaii also have this.
That's right. Many are surprised. We're a very large, urban megalopolis of sorts.
Yeah.
Over 1 million people here in the big city of Honolulu. So we have a lot of the similar issues of any big urban center. Traffic, buildings, a lot of congestion. But as you also mentioned, our islands are really diverse, and I think you've had opportunities to visit some of them. And could you say maybe anything that you noticed, some of the differences from visiting, I think you were on the Big Island, also Maui, any impressions from those places?
Well, the Big Island was very, very much different from this. It was really, what do you call it? The landscape of the volcano.
Yeah, so different geography, different terrain, and of course a lot of diversity. In fact, we often note how the geography there has just got so many different climate zones, very different type of areas. Now, back to this idea, what has brought you here, of course, is a very innovative program, an opportunity for you to learn about global issues, learn about cultural issues, learn about language. And, it is what we often describe as experiential learning outside of just that classroom. And it is really a critical part of helping you develop a better awareness of different things. Obviously you have taken a very big move to make this decision. Not everybody would be willing to do that. I give you a lot of credit for being this adventurous, and I wonder if you could share with us, where did you learn about the program, and what was it that sparked your interest? How did you make a decision to, pick up and decide to go away, so far away, and have this opportunity? What could you tell us about that?
Well, I thought I should travel the world, see some of it, instead of just plain old Denmark. And then I had a friend who also traveled with the Danish Study Center, and she went to Thailand.
Okay.
I was very fond of it, so
Yes.
then
So-
I started to look at their webpage and saw that they had
Something
New
sparked your
Zealand
interest, yes. And so in Denmark, you have what's known as the Danish Study Center, which sets up these different type of opportunities. Here in Hawaii, through Hawaii Pacific University, we have this Pacific Crossroads program that brings you're part of a group right now of 18 Danish students that are here,
Yes.
right? And anything else that you care to share, Aska, about how did you learn about it, and what was it that interested you? Why did you see it?
Well, I did, and we have like in Denmark we have these, what's called like people's high schools. So it's not real schools, it's more for fun.
Okay.
And then when I was to one of these education messes, it was like a big conference of different things you can do when you're done with the high school.
Yes.
Then I was in that section, and first I saw all these typical one in Denmark, but then I saw this, the Danish Study Center, where they combined this, that you got out in the world, you got to travel, you got to experience the world, but you still got that combined with learning. So it was not just the travels, it was also you got something back from the travels
Yeah,
other than
yeah.
just experience.
Yeah, and as young Europeans yourselves, I imagine you've had opportunities to travel to other parts of Europe, other areas. There's a lot of mobility that happens there, right? But this must have been something that clearly is not your normal weekend trip, to Germany or England. This is a big decision to come so far away, and I think that's something that you should be proud that you've made that decision, because these type of things have a profound impact. You will always your life will be changed by it in ways that you'll continue to think carefully about. Now, this learning experience is really in many ways part of what we might describe as a global learning experience, global education. And in order to prepare you for that, you obviously have to have had, as you did, a solid foundation. You've come out of a high school in Denmark. And could you share a little bit about what are the things you learn in high school, whether it's about history or geography or about other cultures or even languages? I mean, you come from a small Scandinavian country. Danish is a language that's not easy for many others to learn, so fortunate for us, you all speak English and you have obviously other language skills. Tell us a little bit about your own educational background. What is schooling like for you in Denmark? What kind of things help prepare you for this type of experience?
I went to a technical high school. We have like different types. So that is nature science high school.
Yeah.
So I didn't have like that much. Normally in Denmark, you should have at least 3 languages: Danish, English, and then either German, Spanish, or French. It depends on the school. But the technical, they cut that last language away, so you only have to have Danish and English.
In English, okay.
So there I had like more with production. So yeah, I got a line that called Technology, Design, and Innovation.
Yeah, so more practical type programs and technical in their orientation.
Yes, so more like project oriented.
Okay, very well. And tell us about your experience. What was your high school like?
I got out of the basic school in Denmark, and then I haven't been to any ongoing high school. I went to what do you call it? More like a technical school.
Okay.
And I'm a trained electrician.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you've got skills that you developed there. Is your language also limited to English, or did you have another third language, or?
Only in basic school I had some German, but
yes, because again, for us in the U.S., as you might hear this joke. I mean, often we only speak English, and we assume everybody else must learn English. But when you are encountering other cultures, and then obviously going outside in the world, language is such an important part. It can help you navigate and understand how others see the world. You are English speakers, and your English is excellent. I wonder, though, having come both from New Zealand, where they speak English, but it's their own version, their own dialect. You're now in the state of Hawaii, where we speak English, of course, but we even have our own language issues. What could you share with us about your impressions of languages, and how well your English prepared you for New Zealand or now in Hawaii?
I think the New Zealand English is. I didn't have that much problem with it, but there are some funny.
Some expressions, some idioms. Yes, yes. Okay. And yourself, anything you would add?
Yeah, it was funny because like when I came to New Zealand, you had this New Zealand accent, and then it was a short, like a break in Sydney where we had 6 days, and then we had like some of the more Australian accent there, and then we came here, and I believe one of the first persons I like heard in the airport was I believe he was a tourist too, but like really typical American accent, as you know it from. I only know it from movies and films because I don't know any Americans, but it's like really funny to come and hear and just like, okay, now I'm in America.
So there was something confirmed right away. No more Australia or New Zealand, of course.
No more mate and that kind.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And of course, English today is increasingly the lingua franca. So even if you're back in Denmark, if you're speaking to an Italian or to someone from Spain or some other European country, quite often English is that language that's going to open up those opportunities for you. You know, it is important, again, as you are here and experiencing this, you're also getting exposed to, well, our own culture, and language is one part of that. I wonder if we might just briefly get a sense of some of the impressions you've had about American culture and society. And again, maybe since you've also benefited from visiting first New Zealand, maybe starting from that, I mean, what did you come away with? What are some of the either images or impressions that you took away from first New Zealand, and then maybe reflections about Hawaii and American culture?
Yeah, the New Zealand culture, that is like really interesting culture, because you got a little bit this feeling that in New Zealand, like you have some kind of adventure thing you can do, like you can jump off a cliff or do something crazy, river raft down a river, and then there is at least one guy who says, that's like the greatest idea ever to jump off the cliff. We're gonna make that into a business. So that was, yeah, really like the whole country was based on this adventure spirit and this, that you should like get, this adrenaline kick. So that was like really funny to experience.
Yeah, so you a sense that they're very adventurous because of, you know, their own natural beauty, but they take it to another level by, you know, how can we harness this and make this into some, you know, either business or activity.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, what could you add to this?
Well, we actually learned some of the indigenous culture also. So like the bungee was a test of manhood.
Oh, excellent! Yeah.
So it's some of the natives. That's.
I know. Yeah, and so I think this is true, of course, of our own state here in Hawaii, but many parts of the country. And as we continue, I mean, how do we combine, you know, what is our own local tradition, our own culture, you know, at a very local level, with the other parts that are more universal? So in a moment here, we're going to be taking a short break, but as we come back, we're joined here by Aska Henson and Tuya Petersen, who are both Danish students that are visiting here at Hawaii Pacific University, part of a cross-cultural Pacific Crossroads program, and we're delighted to join you. So we'll come back after a very short break. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome back to Global Connections. We're joined here today by Aska Henson and Tuya Petersen. These are two Danish students that are here at Hawaii, part of a Pacific Crossroads program. And we're here at this Global Connections show, which is part of the ThinkTech radio series. Let me take a moment right now, and I want to reach out to Jay Fidel, who wants to share with us a few announcements about a Hawaii Venture Capital Association project, or I think it's a meeting. Jay, can you give us more input?
Yeah, thanks very much, Carlos. Next Thursday, the 27th, at the Plaza Club, the Hawaii Venture Capital Association and ThinkTech are going to present its monthly program This time the subject is healthcare in Hawaii, and the subtitle is, "If you think it's expensive now, wait till you see what happens." In fact, every day, I think including today, in the newspaper, there's discussion about how healthcare is going to be more and more expensive, and part of it is the transformation that we have under the Affordable Care Act. And the other subtitle is, "How can we afford the Affordable Care Act?" So we have Ginny Pressler, Executive Vice President of Hawaii Pacific Health, that's Kapiolani and Palimomi Hospitals. She's our moderator and our producer, so to speak. And we have Tom Matsuda. He's in the Office of the Governor. He's the Affordable Care Implementation Manager. Hilton Rathel, Executive Vice President of HMSA. Steve Robertson, Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer of Hawaii Pacific Health. Again, that's Kapiolani Hospital. Matt Delaney, who's a businessman, a founder and CEO of a company called the Hawaii Group. Gordon Ito, who is the State Insurance Commissioner. And Nadine Tensal, who's a doctor, a solo doctor, a solo practitioner. She's the president of the Hawaii Independent Physicians Association. Anyway, this is going to be a discussion of the progress of the transformation in healthcare in Hawaii under the Affordable Care Act. And it's going to be pretty scary in the sense it's going to talk about extra obligations, extra expenses that are going to affect every one of us. That's why, we're going to do this program, because we think people ought to know instead of getting surprised. So anyway, it's next week, Thursday, the 27th, at the Plaza Club. You can sign up on hvca.org and come down and see us and bring papers. You can take notes, Carlos.
Yeah, excellent. No, it sounds like you've got quite a big panel, and this is a big, important issue, as you know, a very complex set of issues that we see with the implementation of this Affordable Health Care Act.
Well, we're trying to make affordable health care as good as it is in Denmark. You know what I mean?
Yes. That is a challenge, and yet at the end of the day, small states like Hawaii have to figure out what's going to work for them. And yet here we have an example of our federal government with a new law that is trying to help implement a lot of change across the board. It will be a challenge, and I think your program will help to inform a lot of people about some of those challenges.
Thank you, Carlos.
Well, thank you. And we're back now here at Global Connections, an opportunity to have a nice conversation with two Danish students that are here in town with us, Aska Henson and Tuya Petersen. These are students that are part of a Pacific Crossroads program that has brought them for a very interesting experiential learning. They've spent 6 weeks down in New Zealand and now another 6 weeks here in Honolulu. And during that program, they're having opportunities to really do a variety of things. Of course, on one hand, they've got some classroom activities, learning in a more traditional way, looking at a range of global issues, a range of culture and language issues, but also a lot of travel or if you will, visits and site visits to different locations. And I'd like to maybe turn for now, and if you can share with us a little bit, what are some of the places you have gone to in the time that you've been here, and what are some things that you found interesting or surprising? What are some of the site trips that you've been able to do here in Hawaii?
Well, here recently we were at Pearl Harbor.
Okay.
So
yes.
where we were down there. That was very interesting. We have some introduction before, because when you live in Europe, and especially you mostly hear about the European part of the Second World War.
Yes.
You don't hear that much about the Pacific part of it.
Yes, of course.
So we of course knows a lot about what had happened with Germany and all that, but it was really interesting to get that side what happened here, on the other side of the globe.
That's right.
So that's an interesting experience to see where it happened and hear about it and learn.
Excellent. What could you add anything to that? Maybe specifically about Pearl Harbor? This is one of our most popular destinations, and it is sort of in many ways a living history. You can see and visualize it, and it's a very powerful impact when you go and see this place and learn that story. Anything you could add to this?
Not much. I also think it was a very powerful experience when you came out to the Arizona Memorial.
Yes.
Really, it had the atmosphere there was really distinct.
Yeah, very solemn and very, very important to preserve that. And of course, it is, part of what your own program is learning. The importance of culture, the importance of even understanding the context and the history. And for us, while Hawaii is a relatively new state in our country, it has been a part of the country, ever since it was initially annexed as a territory in the late 19th century. But this very important event that would occur here in 1941 remains, I think, one of the things that stands out about Hawaii. It's a again, a popular destination, but partly because of the importance it had in the war that brought in the U.S. Well, very interesting to see your impressions on that. What other sites have you been to? What other cultural either locations? I recall, I think you did like a walking tour of our downtown area of Chinatown. Any thoughts on what you saw there? Was it strange, different, interesting?
Well, it was really interesting to see the Parliament building you have, the design behind it.
Yes, this is our state legislature, which is basically the equivalent of a parliament in
yes.
And really has a good image of Hawaii.
Yes, and it's the architecture is very important to understand, the way it's built, and I'm glad that you had a chance to see that. Anything else? So you saw some of the historic buildings in that area, of course. And like Denmark, Hawaii, of course, has a history as a monarchy. We're the only state in our country, and our Iolani Palace is, the living history of that. I wonder if maybe on that, when you think for a moment, people know your country of Denmark, but don't know what it means to have a monarchy. You actually have today a modern monarchy. You have a queen, Margaret II, who has been ruling as the head of state, I think about 40 years now, I believe, since the early 70s. So she's a long-time monarch, and yet for us, living in the U.S., we don't understand fully what does that mean. Perhaps we have the image of the British monarchy. That's the one we might know most. But tell me a little bit about that. What is the monarchy? Where does it fit into Danish society? Is it something that people either talk about much? Do they accept it? Is there support for it? What can you tell us about that?
Well, there's both support and someone who thinks we should get rid of it.
Yeah.
It has, I think, it's a bit of a tourist attraction also.
Mm-hmm.
And if they go outside of the world, it's a good representative of Denmark.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And anything you could add to this?
Yeah, I believe it's very mixed about the monarchy, because there is the people that say that you cannot be born better than another, and you shouldn't be born to privileges just like that.
Yes.
So we have a very high tax rate in Denmark. So some also see that like a problem. I pay these high taxes, and they just go to these people that I don't even know, and just I don't know what they're doing really. But there are also a lot of support that like the monarchy is a part of the Danish history, and that they do a lot of good things. They make some arrangements, and it's like the face to the outside world in a lot of arrangements. So it's really mixed about how people have it about the monarchy.
That's right. No, I think you've put it very well, because it is an important symbol. It's an important part of your heritage, and a number of European countries have monarchs still. Many of them do not, and so it's a real mix. And as you made clear, also, I mean, Denmark is one of the Nordic countries that is well known for a very high tax rate. So people may ask, "Gosh, are we just helping to keep these people in power?" And then I think I liked your note about how there is a very strong sense of egalitarian sort of equality. Everybody should be equal, and why should these privileged monarchs have a special status? So it's a tough issue, but my guess is that as long as they don't have too many scandals and sort of keep a good community service, people probably will continue to support them, and I know what I've read is that in general they have a lot of support. You've got a young prince, I think, who's the heir apparent, someday will potentially rise to be the replacement of his current mother, the queen, and some European monarchies sometimes have young princes that run into a little scandals here or there. Has this I think, is it Frederick, the prince? Has he had any, I don't know, stories or interesting things in the news, or not really? Is he a pretty responsible
He's actually very popular.
Okay.
He's also been in the military.
Excellent.
Took
Okay.
all the special training. Well, our special forces. He's been completing both kind of forces we have.
Yeah, so he's trying to be an average Joe, as we say, connecting to the common people. And interesting, myself, I'm a scholar of international relations. I study a lot of issues related to foreign affairs, foreign policy, and it's interesting to know Denmark has long been a very strong supporter and actually proponent in international conflict management and international negotiation, and actually even in the alliances, the NATO alliance, as we know it, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Indeed, if I'm not mistaken, the current Secretary General of NATO is a Dane, I believe, Rasmussen.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if you might, I don't know, as a young Dane, how much you are either plugged in or aware, but Denmark is a very key, I guess, member and ally of NATO, and has been very prominent in supporting some of NATO's initiatives in Afghanistan and other parts of the Middle East. Is this anything that's on your radar or awareness, or these things can sometimes be very sensitive even back home in terms of, how much, should our role be and what are the purpose of these engagements? Anything you could share about that?
Yeah, it's you hear a lot about it in the news and that kind, but I believe that it's different how we see the role should be, but I do believe that most support that we're like a part of NATO. Mostly we get the idea of what we're doing and that from the news.
Yes.
So they control much what we like get and hear about it.
And as Americans, again, often we don't have as much of an understanding of the nuances, the differences among European countries. Denmark, a small country, part of the northern, European area, Scandinavia, together with, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, even Finland, depending on how you define it, but certainly the Nordic countries. I wonder, could you say a few words? I mean, what is it yourselves? How do you see Denmark different from your other neighboring countries? You share more in common with the Scandinavians, of course, but you border Germany as well. But what is it that other countries might describe about Denmark? What makes you distinct or different? While you are a small country, you are also a country that has a long history, and in fact, in previous centuries, you had more territory, you had more power that extended in many different places. Tell us a little bit about Denmark and where it fits into your region. How do other neighbors describe you or perceive you?
Well, we're very far ahead in renewable energy.
Yeah.
We have a lot of resources going to researching about.
So you're one of the leaders in that region of renewable energy, of course. Yes.
Mostly wind and solar. At a time we had the world's biggest solar plant.
Fascinating. And these are things that we'll talk a little bit more about your impressions here in Hawaii, because these are important items for our own economy and our own agenda now. But I wonder, Aska, could you say anything about what would a Swede or a Norwegian say about Denmark? Are you like the cousin, the neighbor, the brother?
I believe that it's kind of a hate-love relationship between especially Denmark and Sweden, because we have this long history of war between us, who could rule the North Europe. But still, it's there are a lot of there's a lot of Swedish who work in Copenhagen and go over the bridge, and there's a lot of family crossings, and so it's I believe that there's this relationship where you actually like the country, but you like to tease it a little bit and say, Swedes, they only come to Copenhagen to get drunk.
They buy your alcohol because it's cheaper in Denmark.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's a friendly kind of relationship that exists today. And actually, in the case of Sweden, as you mentioned, there's a fascinating geography fact that I think maybe in around 2000, something like that, this bridge would open up that connects you with the city of Malmo on the other side of the peninsula there. And that has really transformed, so much so that now you have people who can live in one country, work in the other, travel immediately, 30 minutes, a short ride. I think it's one of these cases where it just has really transformed the lives of people in those two. I wonder again, finally, if you might just say something else, either images that people have of Denmark, any other stereotypes. We know it as a, overall a fairly, wealthy and well-to-do country, focused a lot on renewable energies. Anything else you could add?
Well, we are known. We had. I don't know if we still have that, but there was one time where we was the happiest country in the world, I believe.
The happiest country. Some surveys that have done often
about
that.
We were the happiest country. So I believe that it's we are fairly happy and satisfied country.
Yeah, with a good quality of life. And these are interesting things. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We're going to move into a short break right now, but as we return, we're here on Global Connections, having a conversation with Aska Henson and Tuya Petersen, Danish students that are here, part of a program at Hawaii Pacific University, the Pacific Crossroads. So join us in just a few minutes after a break. And we're back here on Global Connections, a show that's giving us an opportunity to talk with two Danish students that are visiting here in Hawaii, Aska Henson and Tuya Petersen. And I'm Carlos Juarez, delighted to join you back. I wanted to maybe turn a little bit now and ask you about your own impressions as young students coming to us from Denmark. You're part of a new generation of students getting ready for your college experiences. And we often speak about generational differences, generational changes. I mean, you are part of this new 21st century generation, different kind of technologies that we're a part of. I mean, the opportunity you have today to come and experience this type of global education is not something your parents or grandparents could do quite as easily. I mean, now it's a lot easier. And I wonder if you could share with us, first of all, how is your generation, the young population that you're a part of, how is it different from your parents? I mean, are there things that you feel that are just clearly different, the different world that you're living in, or maybe from your grandparents? What can you say about that, the generational differences?
Well, we have a lot more, as you say, a lot more possibilities to do everything. With our educational system, we are encouraged to study more, and it's a high level of education in Denmark for an average for every young person.
Yeah, and you are young Europeans, and yet you come from a particular country. Are there any things that you could say that Danes maybe are different from other Europeans that you've had a chance to either learn about, or is your experience any different? We spoke a few minutes back about Sweden and Denmark, these two close neighbors and have a long history, but relative to other European countries, are there any other differences you might say?
Well, I believe that the Danish youth are very want to experience a lot, and in Denmark it's normal to take a break on a year. I have myself taken 2 years break between high school and university.
Yes.
Where then normally you get a job half the year, and then all the money you've earned for that half year you use on going out to travel.
Excellent.
So a lot of my friends have been in Asia or in Africa or here in the USA, we are really outgoing country because when the youth want to try a lot, and we believe that the experience you get from traveling and from trying things and working and that gives you just as much, like in life, and gives you just as much that you can work with as an education. Makes you also more ready to like start an education.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's a type of life experience that, frankly, I think you can't put you can't measure it or put a price on it, if you will, but it does help you understand yourself better, and a rare opportunity to see the world, because no doubt once you find a career, a job, it becomes more difficult. You start a family, it's more difficult for you to do this. So it's a great opportunity. I wonder, we were speaking a little bit earlier about your connection there with the neighboring countries and all, but Denmark is a country that has a long history of being a seafaring nation, and so let's say your ancestors from many generations back got on boats and traveled across the sea and made a lot of impact. Even here in Hawaii, in the far remote Pacific, we had many Scandinavian, whaling ships, particularly from Norway, that had a presence here. And so there is an impact, let's say these global connections. And the kind that you're describing now, that you're a part of, the fact that you're part of this program is sort of a new type of connection. It's not the first Dane that's ever come to the Pacific, of course, but it is a new wave of this type of experience, and quite fascinating. As we turn to a little bit more about your own program, I mean, you're here again immersed in a sort of cultural exchange type thing, learning about a lot of different issues. And one of the things that you do in this program is you each individually develop a certain project that you're going to try to learn a little bit about and share as a presentation. And I wanted to maybe ask you, I think I've got some details here. In the case of Aska, you've got an interest in a project that's going to look at Polynesian ocean travel, right?
Yes.
And that looks at everything from the origins, the sort of the star navigation, and the nature of canoes. And of course, Hawaii has a rich tradition in this, as do other islands in the Pacific. What is it that got you interested in this, and what have you learned so far?
Well, it started on New Zealand when we were there, when we were on like one of these culture centers where they was shown one of the huge war canoes they have in New Zealand, and where the guide told me that, or told us as a group, that it was very rough on what you call the surface of the boat, and that was because then it would make small bubbles, which would make the friction smaller when it drove through the water. I was like fascinating that these persons who have made these canoes could actually discovered that if you make a more rough surface on the canoe, then they would make this, and then it could sail faster. So and then when I came here and heard a little bit more about all the star navigation and that, it's really fascinating to think about that they already in that time knew so much about this seafare and how you travel around, and could make all these inventions to make it easier and to make it possible. So, and especially when you like come from Denmark, where you have like the Vikings who travel a lot, it's interesting to get another point of view of how you travel around in water.
Excellent. Yeah, no, and I guess I find it fascinating because your country, as a maritime country, has its own rich heritage, the Vikings that you described and the boats that they would have built over time. And of course, Hawaii, we have an important a project that's been going and is about to embark. I don't know the exact date, but I think this coming year, the Hokulea, which is one of these Polynesian voyaging ships that has been produced, is getting ready to embark on, I think it's a 2-year journey around the world. They've had a previous journey that tried to recreate some of the trips that brought the initial settlers that came here from South Pacific, and so this is an important part of our own heritage here to try and understand and recreate and keep that history alive. And I just, while we would think our worlds are so far apart in many ways, there's some interesting parallels there, and how ocean travel and understanding the building of the boats themselves, the technologies, the tools and everything, very interesting. And so I would imagine that you should find some interesting things and parallels, and maybe that's something you can share with people back home as you visit back in Denmark. Tell us, Tuya, a little bit about yours. You've got a project that's really focused on the issue of renewable energy, and as you mentioned, Denmark is of course one of the leading countries, but in Hawaii we have an important focus on renewable energy these days, looking at everything from solar, hydroelectric, wind, geothermal. Is this something that you already came with this interest? You've had an opportunity, as you've got some of the electrician skills you've described. Did you come with some of this interest already, and you're just looking to deepen it here?
Yeah, I mostly have it during my education as an electrician. but I'm only focusing on geothermal
Okay.
because I think it's a fitting choice for Hawaii with all the volcanoes
yeah.
and.
And for those of us, again, I'm a social scientist, which means I'm not a real scientist, but tell us briefly, what does geothermal mean? It comes from the ground, from the earth?
Geothermal is actually another word for earth heat.
Earth heat, okay.
And therefore using the heat from within the earth, you produce electricity, or you could heat up a house or chill it down.
Yeah.
So it's really has a lot of possibilities.
Excellent, yeah. So you're looking to see what are things happening here in Hawaii, how the potential or the issues, the challenges for us to address renewable energy sources like that here. And of course the story of Denmark is an amazing one. I know a few years ago we had a visit from one of your diplomats from the embassy in Washington, and he came to share, I guess, the story of how 30, maybe 35 years ago, Denmark was fully dependent on imported oil, and you fast forward today, and it's amazing the tremendous progress that's been made on becoming completely self-sufficient, and a lot of it is harnessing these different alternative energies. The challenge for us here is you often will have resistance for different reasons. Some of it is the cost, some of it is just even things about what it does to our environment and real questions. But what we do know is that dependence on imported oil in a place like Hawaii is probably not ideal for our future for so many reasons. But these others would seem good opportunities. But I think myself, I'm a political scientist, and so for us, you may have an idea, but how do you turn it into reality? How do you get together the right people? How do you pass the right laws and then implement them? These are the challenges of any kind of issue, and so it's one thing to understand the science of it, but then to make it into a public policy and implement it, another challenge. As you've been here in Hawaii now, have you come to learn about some of our economy and maybe these issues of renewable energy here? Have you been able to gather any information?
I've seen that you both use solar and wind power. Not much in wind power compared to Denmark.
That's right. I mean, Denmark's one of the leading countries in production of windmills and exporting this technology. We have some here, but again, as I was suggesting earlier, sometimes it's quite controversial. There are people who think it is an eyesore, or it otherwise, could damage the environment or birds, all kinds of different issues. And yet, as you've been here long enough by now, wind is one of our one of the things we have that you don't have to do anything. It's just there, and so you would think it should be pretty straightforward just to kind of open it up for that. Well, this is fascinating, and I wish you luck as you move forward and work on those projects. This is a good example of an enduring outcome of this. You come here, you're looking at a specific issue in some detail, and you can take away something that you will become the expert in: renewable energy here in Hawaii, or Polynesian ocean travel, and some of the story of our own early navigation experts here. As we come ahead, we're going to be looking at another short break now, and we're here on Global Connections, joined by Aska, Henson, and Tuya Petersen, two Danish students that are here, part of a Pacific Crossroads program. So this is Global Connections, part of the ThinkTech radio series. We'll be back in a short minute after a break. And welcome back. You're joining here on Carlos Juarez on Global Connections, and we're joined today by Aska Henson and Tuya Petersen. These are two Danish students that are here, part of a Pacific Crossroads program at Hawaii Pacific University, a cultural exchange opportunity, a chance for you to learn about our part of the world and of course the larger Pacific Rim area. And you know, we've talked a little bit about issues of your own country, your home country in Denmark, and parts of what you've seen here, reflections. I wonder if we could turn for a moment about the exciting topic of food, because food is a very important thing, not just because it's something we need to survive and eat, but you know, food in many ways reveals a lot about cultures. I've had the privilege of visiting Denmark on several occasions, and I must say, good food I've enjoyed very much there. But now you've had an opportunity to be in the South Pacific and now the middle of the Pacific. Also in Hawaii, we have, of course, a mixture of cultures, and many come together here. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of food and you know, either curiosities, things that are different, things that are similar. What could you tell us about your exposure to food items and what it tells you about culture?
Well, it's very different, I think. Some of it, it also takes an expression of need of ingredients. Some of the food items that you need some other minerals and vitamins from other things, so you had to have a replacement.
Have you eaten anything, or maybe whether in New Zealand or here, anything that was something you had never tried before, and anything you could tell us? Any new foods?
The poi,
okay.
which is a mashed vegetable.
That's right. This is the taro root, as we call it, and
Yeah.
it's a traditional food from Hawaii that is very important part of the culture here as well. So you tried poi, very exciting. What would you tell us about poi?
Not much flavor, so you have to eat it with something else.
Okay. Yes.
But,
yes.
I guess it's okay.
Yeah. And Aska, about yourself, food. What can you say about your experiences so far?
Well, actually, we were here at the luau here yesterday, so that was quite an interesting experience.
And the luau is a very, important tradition here, a large banquet with a lot of food. I don't know that it's exactly the same, but as you have the word of a smorgasbord where you've got a variety of different foods, what were some of the foods you remember and any that you enjoyed more?
There's some really good, I could remember mahi-mahi fish, I believe,
yes. Okay.
with some, nut crust, something on it. I can't really remember what it's called.
Okay.
And then, it was actually, most of it pretty good. I'm not that fond of poi, I must say.
It's an acquired taste, some people will say.
Yeah.
But it is important to understand it's a vital part of our own, indigenous culture here,
Yeah.
and certainly for young children, they will grow up getting exposed to it. It's one of these things, and the reason I ask this because food sometimes, especially in American society, we don't think too much about it. We just eat and we go through life, and we don't even see how important it is. But so many cultures, food and the whole ritual and the process of either preparing it or the sitting down becomes a social function. We actually at the university, we have a course called the Anthropology of Food, where we do look at this, how food is reflective of cultural values and beliefs. And this reminds me again, Denmark is a place that has long had a reputation as being a very hospitable. It welcomes people to come in, and you described earlier, you said how often Denmark has been ranked as one of the happiest places. There are some surveys that have been done by different polling agencies confirming this, and part of it is a function of the quality of life that you have. I mean, you have a very high standard of living on the one hand, but that alone doesn't explain it. Frankly, people in Nigeria, people in Mexico, countries with more challenging environments can often have a high level of happiness too, even in the midst of injustice and poverty. But something distinct about the Danish culture, and partly it's evident because your neighboring countries of Sweden and Norway, very well off, very similar on many levels, they're not as happy. So something about Denmark that gives you a little edge. And there's an interesting concept I came to learn from some travels there, a term that, let me see, I had written it down and mentioned it earlier. Now it escapes me.
Hyggelig.
Hyggelig. This is a term that maybe doesn't translate clearly into the American language, but maybe the closest word would be what we call cozy or coziness.
Yeah.
And is this a concept? I mean, how do you learn it, or how do you describe it, or what? How is it manifest? What does this term mean?
Well, it's it's a typical Danish expression. It's like having a good time with people that you like, good friends, and just a relaxed good time. So that's like the main idea behind it, is to gather up some good friends or some family, and then do something that you like together, and enjoy that together.
Yeah. But it might be, even we're talking about food, it might be having, a good mixture of food, maybe a good Carlsberg beer, maybe, going to the right place, putting everything together, like the right environment, and creating this condition to have that. Now again, many cultures do it in different ways, and as you may have seen by now, a lot of the Polynesian cultures have a strong tradition of whenever you have a group of people together, there's going to be food, there's going to be maybe some music, there's a sense of community that comes together. And when I think of this concept in Denmark and my experience, going and visiting friends I have there, that's some of what comes across to me, that there's a pride and a certain desire to want to make sure everything is taken care of, and that, I think, when I hear the word coziness, well, that doesn't fully capture all of it. Anything you could add about this concept, and maybe, the Danish tradition of hyggelig? Hyggelig. Sorry for my Danish. Yeah.
Also a little about the atmosphere. It really has a lot of elements.
Okay.
The people you're with,
Yeah.
the thing you're doing, where you are.
That's right. No, well, I think, again, what it speaks to me is the importance that you're gaining from this whole experience, how important culture is, values, the things that matter to you. And I hope, as I'm sure you will, when you take away from this experience, you come back appreciating different parts of the world, but also appreciating what's important in your own world. So on that, we've come to the end of our program, and I want to just remind our listeners, this is Global Connections, part of the ThinkTech radio series. I'm Carlos Juarez, and joined today by Aska, Henson, and Tuya Petersen, both Danish students that are here at the Pacific Crossroads program at Hawaii Pacific University. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.